The empath's darkest upgrade, cold, calm, unreachable empath's final form, is not when they become cruel. It is when they become impossible to control. There is a signal that changes the way people treat you. Most people spend years trying to earn respect. They try to prove their worth. They explain themselves. They overgive. They overdeliver. They overextend. They become whatever everyone else needs them to be. And somehow, the more they give away, the less they are valued. Have you noticed that? Have you ever wondered why some people walk into a room and instantly command respect without demanding it? What is that hidden signal? What do they know that exhausted empaths often do not? The answer may surprise you, because the signal is not confidence. It is not charisma. It is not status. It is not dominance. The hidden signal that makes people respect you instantly is much quieter. It is the moment people realize they cannot control your emotions. That is the secret. And once you understand why, everything changes. Because many empaths spend years accidentally teaching people the opposite lesson. They teach people that their emotions can be accessed at any moment. They teach people that guilt works. They teach people that pressure works. They teach people that emotional manipulation works, not intentionally, but repeatedly. And every time it happens, respect quietly disappears. This is difficult to hear, but it is also liberating, because respect does not disappear when you are kind. Respect disappears when kindness comes without boundaries. Think about your own life. How many nights have you spent lying awake, replaying someone's words? How many times have you stared at the ceiling, wondering if you were too sensitive? How many times have you rewritten the same message over and over again, trying to find the perfect combination of words, trying to make someone understand, trying to make someone care, trying to make someone see your heart, then deleting the message, then writing it again, then deleting it again, because deep down you knew something. You knew they already understood. They simply did not value what they understood. That realization changes an empath forever, because the old empath believes understanding creates connection. The awakened empath understands something different. Understanding does not create respect. Boundaries create respect. And that is where the transformation begins, not in anger, not in revenge, not in bitterness, but in awareness. You begin noticing things you once ignored. You notice how certain people only contact you when they need something. You notice how some people become uncomfortable when you stop over-explaining. You notice how certain relationships survive only because you carry them. And then a strange thing happens. You get tired, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, energetically. You become exhausted from performing understanding for people who never offer understanding in return. And that exhaustion becomes your teacher, because pain has a purpose. Pain reveals patterns. The truth is that most empaths are not destroyed by one betrayal. They are worn down by thousands of tiny moments, tiny dismissals, tiny manipulations, tiny invalidations, tiny sacrifices, over and over, until one day something inside finally says enough, not loudly, quietly, a whisper, a realization, a decision. And from that moment forward, everything changes. The empath becomes quieter, not because they have nothing to say, because they finally see who deserves to hear it. That difference is everything. People often mistake this stage for coldness. They think the empath is becoming distant. They think the empath is becoming uncaring. They think the empath has changed. And they are right. You have changed, but not in the way they think. You are not becoming darker. You're becoming harder to manipulate. That is what they feel. That is what unsettles them, because manipulation depends on access. Access to your guilt, access to your fears, access to your need for approval, access to your desire to be understood. When that access disappears, their influence disappears too. And suddenly they are dealing with someone unfamiliar, someone calm, someone steady, someone who no longer reacts on command. Have you ever watched a toxic person become confused when they cannot trigger you anymore? It is fascinating. The same words no longer work. The same guilt no longer works. The same emotional hooks no longer work. They throw the bait and nothing happens. Why? Because the old version of you is gone. That version believed every emotional invitation required a response. The new version understands something powerful. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every conflict deserves participation. Not every misunderstanding deserves clarification. Not every accusation deserves defense. This is where respect begins, not when you force it, when you embody it. The hidden signal people respect is emotional self-possession. The ability to remain connected to yourself under pressure, the ability to stay calm when others become chaotic, the ability to stay grounded when others attempt to pull you into emotional storms. And make no mistake, people notice even if they never say a word. They feel it. Energy communicates long before words do. Have you ever met someone who seemed completely at peace with themselves? Someone who wasn't trying to impress anyone? Someone who wasn't seeking validation? Someone who wasn't desperate to be liked? You felt something around them, a presence, a steadiness, a quiet authority. That authority came from emotional independence, and emotional independence is what wounded empaths eventually discover. Usually the hard way, usually after giving too much, usually after loving too much, usually after sacrificing too much. But eventually they learn the lesson arrives. And once it arrives, life is never the same. You stop chasing, you stop convincing, you stop auditioning for acceptance, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop trying to earn what should have been given freely, respect, care, reciprocity. And suddenly your relationships begin changing. Some people leave. Some people become angry. Some people accuse you of changing. Some people say you are selfish. But pay attention. People most upset by your boundaries often benefited from your lack of them. That truth explains so much. It explains why certain people panic when you become unavailable. It explains why certain people become frustrated when you stop over-explaining. It explains why some people preferred the version of you that constantly doubted yourself, because self-doubt made you easier to control. Self-respect changes the equation, and self-respect is often born from heartbreak. There comes a moment when an empath sees the pattern clearly. Maybe it happens after another betrayal. Maybe it happens after another disappointment. Maybe it happens after another sleepless night replaying conversations. But eventually the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You realize that some people were never confused. They were simply comfortable with your tolerance, comfortable with your patience, comfortable with your forgiveness, comfortable with your endless understanding, until one day that comfort disappears. And that is when respect enters, because respect begins where endless access ends. Cold does not mean cruel. Cold means controlled. Cold means deliberate. Cold means you no longer hand your emotional world to people who repeatedly misuse it. You still care, you still feel, you still love, but your heart is no longer an unlocked door. It is a sacred space, and not everyone gets a key. Calm does not mean weak. Calm means regulated. Calm means centered. Calm means your nervous system is no longer addicted to chaos. Many empaths mistake emotional intensity for connection, but intensity is not always connection. Sometimes intensity is dysfunction. Sometimes intensity is confusion. Sometimes intensity is manipulation. Real connection feels different. It feels safe, steady, consistent, respectful. And once you experience that, you stop romanticizing emotional turbulence. You stop calling chaos passion. You stop calling inconsistency excitement. You stop calling disrespect love. That clarity changes everything. Then comes the final stage, the stage that confuses people the most. Unhable. Unhable does not mean broken. Unhable means protected. People can still see you. They can still contact you. They can still think about you. They can still remember you. But they cannot access the version of you that abandoned itself to keep them comfortable. That version is gone forever. And that is why toxic people become unsettled. They did not lose your love. They lost access to your wounds. Ride that again inside your soul. They did not lose your love. They lost access to your wounds. The wound they used to activate, the wound they used to exploit, the wound they used to manipulate. It no longer belongs to them. You healed it, and healed wounds cannot be controlled the same way. This is why your silence becomes powerful. Not because silence is a weapon, because silence reveals who respected your boundaries and who only respected your availability. There is a difference. A massive difference. One creates peace, the other creates exhaustion. Around the middle of this journey, something practical becomes essential. You need a new response, a simple response, a powerful response, because eventually someone will try to pull you back into the old pattern. They will attempt to trigger guilt. They will attempt to trigger obligation. They will attempt to trigger over-explaining. When that happens, use this sentence. I understand how you feel, but I am no longer available for this pattern. Then stop. No speech, no defense, no performance, no emotional audition. Just stop. Notice how uncomfortable that feels at first. Why? Because many empaths have been conditioned to explain everything, conditioned to justify every boundary, conditioned to defend every decision, conditioned to prove every feeling. But healthy boundaries do not require endless explanations. Healthy boundaries require consistency. That is all. Consistency. And consistency creates respect. Not perfection, not people-pleasing, not self-sacrifice. Consistency. The more consistent you become, the more your energy changes. People begin sensing it. They begin noticing something different. You are no longer easy to guilt, no longer easy to pressure, no longer easy to manipulate, not because you became hard, because you became clear. Clarity is powerful. Clarity eliminates confusion. Clarity eliminates mixed signals. Clarity eliminates emotional negotiations. And with clarity comes peace, a deep peace, a peace that does not depend on anyone else's approval, a peace that survives rejection, a peace that survives criticism, a peace that survives misunderstanding, because your worth is no longer being decided by external voices. It comes from within. That is the hidden signal. The signal is not confidence. It is self-trust. People respect those who trust themselves because self-trust communicates certainty, not arrogance. Certainty, the certainty that you will protect your peace, the certainty that you will honor your values, the certainty that you will not betray yourself for acceptance. That certainty changes how people respond to you. It changes how you respond to yourself. And perhaps that is the most important transformation of all. Because the old empath often abandoned themselves, tiny compromises, tiny betrayals, tiny acts of self-abandonment day after day, year after year, until they forgot what their own needs sounded like. Then healing begins, and suddenly their own voice returns quickly, steadily, powerfully. They begin listening to themselves again, trusting themselves again, choosing themselves again, not selfishly, wisely, because there is nothing noble about abandoning yourself, and there is nothing selfish about protecting yourself. Those truths take time to learn, but once learned, they become permanent. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop making yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. You stop carrying emotional responsibilities that never belong to you. And the world responds differently, not because you demanded respect, because you demonstrated self-respect. People often mirror what you teach them. When you treat yourself as valuable, others notice. When you protect your energy, others notice. When you stop tolerating disrespect, others notice. When you stop negotiating your worth, others notice. The signal becomes impossible to miss, and suddenly respect arrives, not from everyone, it never will, but from the right people, the healthy people, the emotionally mature people, the people capable of meeting you where you are. Those are the people worth keeping. The rest, you release them without anger, without revenge, without hatred, simply with acceptance. Because not everyone is meant to travel with you forever. Some people were lessons, some people were mirrors, some people were teachers disguised as pain, and now their purpose is complete. You can let them go, not because they are evil, because you are evolving. The empath's greatest power was never their ability to absorb pain. It was their ability to transform it, to turn suffering into wisdom, confusion into clarity, heartbreak into boundaries, and wounds into strength. That is the real upgrade. That is the hidden signal. The signal people instantly respect, a person who no longer needs permission to value themselves, a person who no longer chases validation, a person who no longer explains their worth, a person who remains calm in chaos, a person who remains grounded under pressure, a person who remains true to themselves no matter who stays or leaves. That energy cannot be faked. It can only be earned. And if you are listening to these words right now, there is a reason, because somewhere inside you, this transformation is already happening. You can feel it. The old patterns are breaking. The old fears are fading. The old version of you is disappearing. And what emerges in its place is something beautiful, not colder, clearer, not harder, stronger, not disconnected, free. You are not becoming darker. You are becoming harder to manipulate. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming conscious. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming discerning. And one day, the people who once underestimated you will finally understand something. Greatest power was never your ability to endure mistreatment. It was your ability to walk away from it peacefully. And when a toxic person finally realizes they can no longer access your emotions, no longer trigger your guilt, and no longer pull you back into old patterns, that is when they truly discover the version of you they never expected to meet, the one who finally acted like they were the chosen one.